3 years ago, my own sister personally sent me to a reformatory. Young Master Jia claimed, I cost the company 100 million, so my eldest sister threw me in there without a second thought to teach me a lesson. My parents just watched coldly like I was a stain on their lives. 3 years later, I finally learned the rules. But now that I am back, they regret it. 3 years later, here I am standing at the gates of the Zhou family villa again. Honestly, I never thought I would ever return. It was right here on that rainy night, 3 years ago, that they dragged me out. I remember it so clearly. The ground was covered in mud. Two security guards dragged me away, while I clawed at the doorframe, my fingernails splitting and leaving bloody streaks behind. I bet those stains are still there today. I screamed back at the house, begging my parents and sisters to believe me. I kept shouting that I never touched that 100 million. I begged them to believe I didn't frame Zhou Ming. I pleaded for just one shred of trust, but nobody cared. They just stood on the steps staring at me like I was a rabid dog, a born monster. My dad wouldn't even look at me. He just turned his back. My mom cried, but only over how she could have given birth to a creature like me. My eldest sister, Zhou Ting coldly told the guards to hurry up so the neighbors wouldn't see the drama. My second sister adjusted her glasses and said I needed reform. My third sister, Yihui, wanted to speak, but one glare from Qingyue silenced her. And Zhou Ming, he stood behind everyone, shoulders trembling as if he were terrified, but only I saw the fleeting smirk on his face when he looked up. I will never forget that smug grin as long as I live. Now, after 3 years and 1,095 days, I am finally back. Today is a bright, sunny day. The glare actually hurts my eyes. I stand outside the gates holding a single faded canvas bag. Inside is everything I own after 3 years in that place. Looking down at my clothes, my gray shirt is washed out and completely faded. But I have it buttoned up perfectly right to the very top. The doctor always said that neat attire is the first step to maintaining order. He said people like me need order more than anything. I am someone who respects order now. Suddenly, the front door swings open and the first to rush out is Zhou Ming. He looks exactly the same, clean-cut, wearing light gray loungewear, with his soft hair falling over his forehead. He still has that harmless, innocent look of a helpless rabbit. The moment he sees me, his expression shifts instantly. First, he freezes in absolute shock, and then his eyes well up with tears. He forces a smile that looks both thrilled and heartbroken as he rushes over to me. "Sister, you are finally back," he cries, grabbing my arm. His voice is shaking. "You've gotten so thin. Did you suffer in there? Mom, Dad, and I missed you every day, just waiting for you to come home." Missed me every day. My heart remains completely flat. I just looked down at his hand gripping my arm. 3 years ago, this very hand delivered the fake evidence to our father. "Sister, why aren't you saying anything?" Zhou Ming asks. His eyes search mine. "Are you still mad at us?" "Back then I had no choice. All the evidence pointed to you." Before he can finish, my mother rushes out of the house. She is wearing a dark red cardigan. Her hair is much grayer now, and her wrinkles have deepened. The moment she sees me, her eyes fill with tears. She stumbles down the steps and throws her arms around me. "Ting Ting, my baby," she sobs, hugging me so tightly that her entire body shakes. "You suffered so much. It is all my fault. I am so sorry." I stand there completely rigid. Her warm, salty tears smear against my neck. She is still wearing that familiar perfume of hers. I used to find comfort in that scent, thinking of it as the smell of home. But right now only one thought occupies my mind. Why should her emotions matter to me? The doctor said, "Feelings are just noise, and I don't need to listen to noise." I step backward gently, but firmly, slipping right out of her embrace. Her hands freeze in midair, and the look of sheer bewilderment on her face is actually quite amusing. "Ting Ting." She blinks, startled. "What's wrong, Mom? Sister just got back. She probably isn't used to this yet." Zhou Ming quickly chimes in to smooth things over, reaching out to support her. "Don't be sad. I'm sure she still cares about us." Just then, my third sister, Yihui, runs out wearing an off-white dress with her hair down. Her eyes are red, too. "Ting Ting," she calls out, rushing to grab my hand. I sidestep to avoid her touch. Her hand hangs awkwardly in the air as she offers a tense smile. "Ting Ting, you are so thin. Did you not eat well in there? I'll have the kitchen make your favorite foods right away." I stare at their faces. Honestly, I can see the tears and the pain in their eyes, but I feel absolutely nothing. It is as if the space where my heart used to be is completely hollow. like a dry well where drop stones make no sound. The doctor was right. Emotions can indeed be trained out of existence. The sharp click of high heels echoes from the stairs. My eldest sister, Zhou Ting walks down. She is exactly as she was dressed, in a dark suit, hair in a perfect bun face, blank and an icy glare that could freeze hell. She is the true power behind the Zhou family and the one who personally sent me to the reformatory. Looking down at me from the steps, her eyes are filled with that same critical judgment. "You're back," she says, her voice as freezing as ever. 3 years. Did you finally learn some manners? The moment those words leave her mouth, the air in the living room freezes. My mother stops crying. My third sister falls silent, and even Zhou Ming stands quietly to the side, his eyes darting back and forth as he waits for the drama. They all stare at me. If this were 3 years ago, I would have run away immediately. I would have hung my head, eyes red, whispering, "Sister, I'm sorry." I would have desperately explained how obedient I was, begging her to stop looking at me like that. But now I simply look at her jawline. The doctor said looking into someone's eyes can trigger unnecessary empathy. Looking at their jaw or collarbone is polite yet keeps you rational. I speak up, my voice soft, steady, and flat. "Director Zhou." The moment those words come out, Zhou Tingyue's brow furrows sharply and my mother gasps. "Ting Ting, what did you just call your sister?" I ignore her and proceed to state my pre-planned demands in one go. I need 3 things. First, my own private room. Second, a communication device. Third, my personal identification documents. I deliver each word slowly and deliberately, as if I am registering at a company reception desk. My mother panics, stepping forward to grab my hand. "Ting Ting, what nonsense is this? This is your home. I am your mother. Were you traumatized in there? Tell me Mom is here." Once again, I sidestep her hand. "Mrs. Zhou," I look at her. "Can my requests be fulfilled now?" The words Mrs. Zhou strike her like a knife directly to the heart. Her face turns paper white. Her lips tremble and tears stream down. "What did you call me? Have you lost your mind?" "Ting Ting, I am your mother." "If I do not call you Mrs. Zhou, should I call you Ms. Zhou?" I ask back with total sincerity. The doctor taught me that brutal honesty is the best weapon to cut through emotional blackmail. I am not trying to anger her. I am simply stating a fact. She is indeed my biological mother, but legally speaking, she is merely Zhou Jianen's wife. Zhou Qingyue sneers, cutting off my mother's crying. She glares at me. "Enough. It seems 3 years inside actually made you arrogant. Do you honestly think playing these ridiculous mind games with your family will make us coddle you?" She turns to the butler. "Give her her ID and old phone. Let her go to the guest room at the far end of the 2nd floor. I want to see how long she can maintain this emotionless face. She thinks I am acting, playing a part to make them feel guilty or to protest. I don't argue. The doctor said right or wrong is based on behavioral evidence, not feelings. What they think is just their brain activity, and it has nothing to do with me." I pick up my canvas bag, take my ID and phone from the butler, and head toward the stairs. At the landing, Zhou Ming catches up and blocks my path. Out of sight from the living room, Zhou Ming's face instantly drops all sympathy. He leans in close, whispering with fake concern. "Sister, I'm truly glad you're back." He sighs, putting on a worried act. "But you absolutely must not bring up that 100 million again. Eldest sister is still furious. If you cause trouble again, they will send you right back." As he speaks, his eyes search my face. He is testing me. He wants to see me lose control, screaming and shouting like I did 3 years ago, that he was the one who stole it. Then he can conveniently throw himself down the stairs and frame me all over again. What a predictable script. I look at his fake face. "Do you want me to reason with you, or do you expect me to just keep taking your abuse?" I ask quietly. Zhou Ming freezes. He clearly didn't expect such a blunt response. "Sister, what are you saying? I'm trying to help you. The doctor said lying is bad and slander is bad." I stare at him, my voice quieter than before, as if stating an absolute truth. "If you are trying to remind me, you will need to provide actual proof connecting me to that 100 million. If you are threatening me," I pause, my tone remaining entirely polite, "the first one to cross the line will face the consequences. Please step aside, Master Zhou. Blocking someone is quite rude." Zhou Ming stares at me as if he's seen a ghost. There is no anger or fear in his eyes, only the realization that he is looking into stagnant water. I ignore him. I walk right past his frozen body toward the guest room at the end of the hall. The moment the door shuts, I shut out the entire Zhou family. The room is small but clean. The sheets are fresh, and there is a small green plant on the desk. Standing by the window, I look down at the neatly trimmed shrubs in the garden below. This house hasn't changed at all in 3 years, but I am no longer the same Zhou Ting. I take out my old phone, which hasn't been charged in 3 years. The moment the screen lights up, hundreds of unread messages flood in. They're all from 3 years ago. I don't open them. Instead, I open the Notes app and type Observation Day 1 Physical Boundaries Established. The doctor was right. Keeping a record is the best way to stay sane. I sit on the bed watching the sky outside slowly fade into darkness. Zhou Ming's face flashes through my mind, his fake smiles, his empty concern. 3 years ago, I fell for his act completely. I treated him like my own blood brother, telling him everything and trusting his every word. And what did he do? He turned around and sold me out. Completely betrayed me. I don't hate him. Truly, I don't. The doctor said hatred takes effort, and I don't have the energy for that. But I remember everything he did. I remember how he laid the trap step by step and pushed me into the abyss. I remember all of it. From the hallway, there are soft footsteps followed by a knock. Ting Ting, it's Mom. I made you some soup. Can you open the door? I don't move. Ting Ting, I know you are angry, but we are family. Blood is thicker than water. It sounds so sweet. But when they threw me out 3 years ago, why didn't they mention blood being thicker than water? I close my eyes listening to her sobbing outside. My heart remains completely blank. Day 1 of my observation is complete. Noise level moderate. Emotional fluctuation. 5. The next morning I wake up at exactly 6. It's a habit from the reformatory. No matter how tired I am or how late I sleep, I must open my eyes at 6. Being late is punished. Staying in bed is punished. Everything goes by the rules. Wash up, make the bed, and hang the towel exactly 5 centimeters from the wall. The doctor said when you can't control the world, you must control your immediate surroundings. I stare at my face in the mirror for a moment. I've lost weight, my eyes are hollow, and my skin is rough, but my gaze is brighter and clearer than before. The doctor said that is because I cleared out all useless emotions. Good. As I head downstairs, the entire Zhou family is already seated. The long dining table is loaded with an elaborate breakfast, including sweet pastries from the old bakery I used to love. Every time I came home before, my mother would buy them for me. My third sister, Yuhui, looks up, her eyes lighting up as she reaches out, but my eldest sister stops her with a single. With a cold glare, Zhou Qingyue sat down. I walked to the far end of the dining table, pulling out a chair and sitting down without making a sound. Since you are back, some rules must be set early, she said, putting down her coffee cup. The sharp clink of porcelain echoed in the quiet dining room, sounding incredibly harsh. She slid a printed document to the middle of the table. First, without my permission, do not step outside this villa. Second, stay away from our group business and your old contacts. Third, you are forbidden from spreading rumors about these past 3 years. Our family cannot lose face. She stared at me like a judge sentencing a convict. Do you understand? My mother softly pleaded. Next to her saying, Qingyue Ting Ting just got back. Isn't this too harsh? Zhou Qingyue cut her off. Sending him away back then was exactly to cure his lying and dishonesty. Without rules, he will ruin our family again. I stared down at the paper. The text was clear. Every line was designed to turn me into an invisible object. Zhou Ming sat next to her, handing her a tissue with a sickeningly sweet voice. Sister, do not be angry. I am sure brother understands your good intentions. He turned to me, his eyes full of smug pity. Brother, do not blame big sister. It is all for your own good. As long as you behave, we are still a family. Those words, for your own good, felt like a dull saw scraping against my scarred wounds. I set my utensils down and looked up at Zhou Qingyue. President Zhou, are you welcoming me home or taking a prisoner back to jail? Her face darkened. What did you say? According to our laws, restricting someone's freedom is a crime. I pulled out my old phone, hitting the record button in front of everyone. Now please repeat those 3 house rules right into my microphone. The dining room went dead silent. Utter silence. My father set down his newspaper, his forehead furrowing deeply. My mother gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Zhou Qingyue looked as if she had been slapped, slamming her hands down as she stood. Zhou Ting, you dare talk to me about the law? Who do you think you are? I am Zhou Ting. I stared at her collarbone, my voice perfectly level. My doctor said, When you cannot classify someone's behavior, record it as evidence. Your demands go beyond house rules. This is forced imprisonment. I stood up and slid my phone back into my pocket, moving as calmly as a school teacher. If you are not going to repeat them, I will act as if that paper does not exist. Zhou Ting shook with rage, her finger trembling. You ungrateful wretch, 3 years inside teach you rules, but taught you how to fight your own family. My second sister, Zhou Roqiao, had been silent until now. She pushed up her glasses with cold, professional scrutiny. Ting, you have changed, she said. You got smarter. You are using this to seek attention or to threaten us? She turned to Zhou Ting, her voice full of confidence. Sister, in psychology, this is called learned antisocial behavior. He is not trying to reason. He is trying to gain control. I looked at my lawyer sister. 3 years ago, she used her flawless logic to weave false testimonies into an unbreakable chain sealing my guilt. Second sister, I called out politely. Since you know the law, you must know that without a court order, nobody can restrict a citizen's movement. As for seeking attention, I let out a faint, mocking smile. What makes you think I still want your attention? My doctor said never try to wake people pretending to be asleep. Just rip the blankets off. I turned around, ignoring their stunned faces, and walked straight for the door. Stop, Zhou Ting, you have barked behind me. I paused and turned back. Is there something else, President Zhou? Where are you going to get a new phone card? I replied calmly. And to the hospital. Why the hospital? My mother asked quickly. My doctor says high-pressure environments require regular psych evaluations to ensure I am not aggressive. I locked eyes with Zhou Ming, lingering on his perfect fake face. After all, young Master Zhou is so fragile. If I bump into him, he might slip and fall again. Zhou Ming's face went pale. That fear of being exposed flashed in his eyes. I pushed open the front door into the blinding sunlight. I did not look back. I knew he was already planning with my sister on how to legally erase me as an unstable threat, but I only need to wait. My doctor said bad people always leave traces because of greed. I will just be the one who settles the score when they slip up. Observation log day 2. The battle of rules begins. Their emotions are highly unstable. The noise level is rising. By the time I left the hospital, it was past 4 p.m. My evaluation was actually good. The doctor said I am perfectly stable with no violent or self-destructive tendencies. I just scored shockingly low in emotional empathy. He said that is normal. Anyone surviving that place ends up emotionally numb. It does not bother me. Feelings do not matter anymore. I slid my new SIM card in, booted up the phone, and was immediately flooded with messages from 3 years ago. Classmates, old colleagues, and several were from Zhou Yihui asking where I was, begging me to reply. I did not read them. I cleared everything. Let the past stay buried. I walked over to the bus stop to wait. An old lady stood next to me with her groceries. She stared at my worn-out clothes for a moment, but said nothing. I liked it. No one knew me. No one was giving me that look, the look reserved for the black sheep of the Zhou family. When the bus arrived, I took a window seat. As we rattled along, I stared at the familiar streets I used to walk 3 years ago. The city was still as loud and bustling as ever, but looking at it now felt like staring at a faded photo. Everything was there, yet nothing was. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Send me today's test results. I typed back a single word. Okay. My doctor said he is the only one who genuinely cares for me. His methods are cold and terrifying, but he is right. In this world, only rules do not betray. Only order is eternal. I leaned back and closed my eyes, remembering that night 3 years ago. I had just been locked away in a room with 4 white walls. No windows, no bed, just a hard wooden chair. They made me sit there facing the wall all day. Day 1, I cried. Day 2, I screamed. Day 3, I begged. By day 4, I had lost my voice. I just sat there staring at the empty wall until everything became clear. My doctor later called it learned helplessness. Then he taught me to observe, to record, to lock away my emotions, and to use cold logic instead of feeling. He said it was the only way to escape and protect myself from ever being hurt again. I mastered it. I really did. The bus stopped and I walked back to the villa in the dark. The gate was wide open, the inside glowing with light. I heard voices and laughter. Guess. I stepped inside to find the living room packed with distant relatives and business associates, drinking tea, eating snacks, and sharing jokes. The moment they saw me, the laughter died. Every eye turned to me. They stared as if I were a zoo animal with a mix of curiosity, disgust, and morbid fascination. So this is the one who spent 3 years locked up? An aunt whispered, leaning in. Keep your voice down. I heard people from those places are unstable. Thank goodness for little Ming. Look how well he runs the company. Blood isn't always thicker than water. Every word drifted straight into my ears. I kept walking, heading straight for the water dispenser. I filled a clean glass with warm water. My doctor said other people's opinions are just their own projections, not my reality. I did not care. But I noticed Zhou Ming was missing. Just then, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Zhou Ming descended wearing a fresh, light blue suit, his hair perfectly styled, sporting that flawless smile. His eyes lit up when he saw me. He walked over holding a champagne glass. "Brother, you are back," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why didn't you say you were leaving today? I was so worried." He sized me up. "Brother, those clothes are so old. Let me buy you some new ones. We are the Zhou family. We cannot have people laughing at us." He sounded incredibly sweet and mature. Relatives nodded, praising his kindness to his older brother. I stayed silent, sipping my water. Zhou Ming wanted more of a reaction, so he stepped closer, whispering so only I could hear. "See, even if you are back, nobody wants you. You are just trash." Then he jumped back, his face twisting into sudden terror as he raised his hands. "Brother, please, do not get upset. I was only trying to help." Guests gasped, and someone called for security. Zhou Ting Yue marched out from the crowd, her face dark. "Zhou Ting, what is wrong with you now? Do you have no respect for this event?" She did not even ask what happened before pinning the blame on me. Zhou Ming shrank behind her shoulders, trembling like a scared rabbit. "Sister, do not blame him. He just got out of that place. It is natural he is unstable. I am fine as long as he does not hit me." He was telling everyone that I was violent and dangerous. I stared at his innocent mask, then at my sister's furious glare. Finally, I looked at my parents nearby. They were frowning eyes filled with fear and suspicion. This was my family. I set the glass down, the soft click echoing in the silence. I took a step toward Zhou Ming. He expected me to scream and lose control like 3 years ago, desperately pleading my innocence. A flash of triumph crossed his eyes, but I did not. I raised my hand and calmly slapped him across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the room. Zhou Ming stumbled back, his champagne glass shattering on the floor. Dead silence fell over the crowd. Everyone was paralyzed. Even Zhou Ting Yue froze, unable to believe I had actually done it. Zhou Ming clutched his swollen cheek, staring in disbelief as tears welled up. "Brother, why did you hit me?" My mother shrieked, rushing over to shield him and shoving me back. "Are you insane? How dare you strike him?" I took 2 steps back to steady myself. Facing their accusations, I quietly adjusted my cuffs, my voice eerily calm. My doctor said, "Slander is a bad behavior, and I stop bad behavior." I stared at Zhou Ming with flat eyes. "You attacked me verbally and tried to frame me as a threat. That is slander. Right and wrong are determined by evidence, not feelings. Whoever crosses the line pays the price. In this family, I am the one who settles the bill." My words plunged the room into an even deeper silence. They stared at me as if I were a machine. Zhou Ting Yue finally broke the silence, trembling with rage. "Zhou Ting, you are still a monster, and now you are violent. 3 years in the reformatory still didn't teach you how to behave." He barked, turning to yell at the butler to grab a rope, tie me up, and call the cops. The temperature in the hall plummeted to freezing. While Zhou Ting Yue's voice still echoed, the butler marched in with 2 guards. My mother clung tightly to Zhou Ming, shielding him like an infant threatened by a demon, her eyes dripping with pure hatred for me. My father, Zhou Jianan, stepped out of the crowd. His voice was heavy, carrying unquestionable authority. "Zhou Ting, you have deeply disappointed me," he said, staring at me, his eyes burning with rage. 3 years ago, you lied and stole. We sent you away for correction to save you, yet here you are committing violence in public. Do you have any respect for this family?" I stared at him. He hadn't changed at all, still loving to preach from his moral high ground. He never asked what Zhou Ming said to me. He only cared about the result. I struck first. 2 guards lunged to grab my shoulders, but I slipped past them with a slight tilt of my body. My doctor once said that when chaos takes over, safety only comes from the rules. Ignoring them, I pulled my phone from my pocket. My fingers tapped the screen, steady, without a single tremor. Zhou Ting Yue sneered, trying to record us again. "What good is that in this house? Zhou Ting, you aren't leaving this room today." I looked up, caught her eye, and then right in front of everyone, I dialed 3 numbers, 911. The room fell dead silent. My father's face darkened with fury. He never expected me to call the police. The call connected almost instantly. "Hello, I need to report an emergency. At this address, someone is illegally holding me against my will and threatening me with physical violence." My voice was calm and steady as I recited the exact address. There are multiple witnesses here, and all evidence is backed up to the cloud. Please send officers immediately." I hung up and pocketed my phone. Zhou Ting looked ready to explode. "You called the cops," she shrieked. "Zhou Ting, you dare call the police on your own parents and sister. You're mistaken, Director Zhou," I corrected her. "They aren't here to arrest family. They're here to handle lawbreakers." She opened her mouth to argue, but my father cut her off, staring at me with a look of genuine scrutiny. He was obsessed with public image. If the police arrived, tomorrow's headlines would scream about the Zhou family's returned son calling the cops. Their stock price would plummet instantly. "Stop, put the phone down," my mother pleaded, her voice softening as she tried to negotiate. She tried using that sickening fake maternal love to sweep this under the rug. "We only want what's best for you. Just apologize to Ming and we can forget this. My doctor once said that cheap tears and late comfort are nothing but noise." I cut her off, checking my watch. "The police will be here in 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to dismiss these guards or let the law do it for you." The guards exchanged nervous glances, terrified of getting sued. Zhou Ming cowered in my mother's arms, face paper white. He had never seen me fight back like this. Before, a few of his tears would get me locked in dark rooms, starved, or dragged back to that nightmare facility. But my tears ran dry long ago. I left my heart behind in that reformatory. 5 minutes later, sirens echoed in the courtyard, and flashing red and blue lights illuminated the room, reflecting harshly off the glass. My third sister, Zhou Yihui, scrambled to open the door. Officers filed in, their faces grim. "Who called?" I raised my hand and stepped past the crowd. "I did, officer. Here is my identification." I handed over the ID I had just replaced along with my phone. "This is the recording of Ms. Zhou Ting threatening to lock me in, and video of these guards attempting to restrain me illegally." Zhou Ting froze. My second sister, Zhou Ruxiao, a corporate lawyer who bragged about never losing a case, stood there completely stunned. The cop listened to the audio, his frown deepening as he turned to my father. "Mr. Zhou holding anyone against their will is a crime. Even if he is your biological son once he is an adult, he is an independent citizen under the protection of the law." My father took a deep breath, desperately clinging to his dignity. "Officer, this is just a family dispute. He just got home and is highly unstable." "My logs show he is perfectly calm," the officer replied coldly, closing his notebook. "Instead, you gathered a mob to corner him. Mr. Zhou, if you want to avoid a trip to the station, dismiss these guards immediately and guarantee you won't violate Mr. Zhou Ting's rights again." The officer then turned to me. "Mr. Zhou, if you need a protective order or help moving your things, we can assist you." I looked at them all, my father's pale face, sister's rage, mother's shock, Ming's terror, and the complicated looks on my other sisters' faces. "No need, officer," I said, bowing politely. "I just need them to understand that I am no longer bound by family rules. I am protected by the law." Once the police left, the room fell dead silent. The relatives had already slipped away, leaving only my immediate family. My father stood in the shadows, glaring at me as if trying to dissect my mind. "What on earth did they teach you in that place?" he hissed. I paused on the stairs, my hand resting on the icy banister. "I learned how to deal with beasts." I turned around, looking down at them. "My doctor once said that when you are stripped of all dignity, you either drown in the mud or learn to use the system against itself." "Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, Director Zhou," I addressed them one by one, my voice completely flat. "Welcome to my world." With that, I walked to my room and locked the door. Observation log, day 4. External system successfully integrated. Noise forcibly silenced. The subjects are beginning to exhibit fear. The doctor said fear is the only medicine to make them see clearly. I sat on the bed, staring into the pitch-black night. Downstairs was finally silent. The screaming had stopped. They had likely retreated to their own rooms to process what just happened. I wonder what they are thinking. Are they cursing me as an ungrateful wretch or regretting their decision to send me away? Or maybe they aren't thinking at all. People like them never self-reflect. They just blame everyone else. I lay back and stared at the white ceiling. It looked exactly like the ceiling of my solitary cell in the reformatory. Back then I used to lie here and stare at it for days on end. Sometimes I wondered what would happen if I died in there. Would they care? Would Mom cry? Would Dad regret it? Would my sisters ever miss me? But then I realized they wouldn't. They would only feel relieved to be rid of their disgraced son. So I refused to die. I had to survive, walk out of that place and stand before them. I wanted them to see exactly what they had created, how their ruined son returned. My phone buzzed. It was a text from that familiar number saying log tonight's events. I replied already done. The response came back, excellent, keep observing. I set my phone down and closed my eyes. The doctor was right. I am his masterpiece molded by his own hands. Without him, I wouldn't exist. Yet I sometimes wonder who I would be if we had never met. I would probably be dead perished inside those stark white walls broken by the daily shocks and solitary confinement, swallowed by that bottomless pit of despair. So I owe him my gratitude. His methods were terrifying, but he kept me alive. That is all that matters. Observation log day 4 complete, noise level high. Emotional fluctuation 5. The morning after the police left, the butler knocked to say Mr. Zhou and Director Zhou were waiting in the study. I put on my faded gray shirt, fastening every single button all the way to my throat. Downstairs, the living room was silent. My mother sat on the couch, her eyes swollen red. Her lips trembled as I passed, but she said nothing. I ignored her, walking straight to the study. The door was open. My father sat behind a massive rosewood desk, while Zhou Ting stood by the window. This room was the family's command center. I used to tremble, just stepping inside, palms slick with sweat, constantly watching their faces, terrified of saying the wrong thing or being compared to the perfect Zhou Ming. But now all I noticed was how well insulated the room was. I walked in, pulled out the chair opposite my father, and sat down, quietly making no noise. My father watched me, his brows tightly furrowed. A control freak obsessed with his reputation, last night's police presence, made him realize his old discipline was useless against me now. He had no choice but to shift to a businessman's cold negotiation style. Zhou Ting marched over and tossed a thick folder in front of me. The papers fanned out, revealing the title Non-Disclosure Agreement and Waiver of Inheritance. Read it, she said coldly, her voice dripping with condescension. Sign this promise to keep quiet and never touch Zhou Ming again, and you will get $50,000 a month from the family trust. You can live comfortably as the family's young master, provided you behave. I looked down at the dense text. Every single clause was a restriction on my freedom. I couldn't speak of the reformatory, couldn't damage the family's reputation, and had to forfeit all shares and inheritance. The penalty for breach was astronomical. My father took a sip of tea. Ting Ting, it's not that we don't want you here, but last night's stunt was shameful. I talked with your sister. Sign this, and the past is forgotten. We only want what is best for you to keep you from straying again. That phrase, what is best for you, is incredibly useful. 3 years ago, they used those exact words to throw me into a car and lock me away in that dark hellhole. Now they were using it again to buy my silence for life. I felt no anger, not even a trace of disappointment. I simply picked up a pen and pulled off the cap. Seeing my compliance, Zhou Ting smirked. Smart move, she sneered. If we knew money was all it took, we wouldn't have had that mess 3 years ago. I'll sign, I said. My voice was as flat as a straight line, but the terms are unbalanced. I need to add one condition. My father set down his cup, his eyes sharp. What condition? Want more money, Zhou Ting scoffed. I shook my head. I pressed the pen to the paper and slowly wrote a line in the margin, my handwriting perfectly neat, like typed print. I spun the document around and pushed it toward them. I will waive my inheritance and keep quiet, but in return I reserve the right to sue for illegal imprisonment and mental distress from 3 years ago. The study went deathly quiet. My father's face turned white. Zhou Ting slammed the desk, pointing aggressively at my face. Are you insane? Zhou Ting reserved the right to sue. You want to sue us? I stared at her. My doctor said right and wrong are not feelings, they are evidence. You want to restrict my actions, so I will use the law to settle yours. That is equal exchange. My father bolted upright, roaring, I am your father. She is your own sister. You want to sue us now. Have you lost your mind? He yelled so loudly that the teacups rattled. I didn't even blink. Yes, I am settling accounts. I looked at my father. Because my doctor said self-preservation is the absolute rule. I will never yield to tears or family pressure again. Stop this nonsense. Zhou Ting shrieked, shaking with rage. Who do you think you are? What evidence do you even have? Those words triggered my program. I didn't get angry. Instead, I felt my internal temperature plummet. I stood up calmly, adjusting my cuffs, and spoke with terrifying politeness. Director Zhou, do you want to negotiate logically, or do you just expect me to take your abuse? What makes you think I still care about your validation? Staring at their shocked, unfamiliar faces, I set the pen down gently. I won't explain myself. Explanations are for people who care. Since we can't agree, the deal is off. I owe you nothing. What you owe me is not money or an apology, but consequences. I turned and walked out of the study. Behind me, my father and Zhou Ting stared. They finally realized I was no longer the son who would cry and beg for mercy. I had become a machine, running on pure logic, a monster they could no longer control. I opened the study door. Zhou Ming stood in the hallway, holding a plate of sliced fruit, his face white as paper. He had clearly been eavesdropping for a long time. When he saw me come out, he flinched and took a huge step back. His hand shook, dropping a silver fork onto the carpet. He stared at me, his eyes stripped of yesterday's smug provocation and fake innocence. Now there was only pure naked panic. In the past, all he had to do was fake tears to trigger my rage, make me lose control, and use our parents to crush me underfoot. But now he saw the truth. I was no longer begging for love or competing for attention. I did not even want the family business or money. A madman who wants nothing cannot be emotionally blackmailed. I stopped glancing at the fork on the floor. "Mr. Zhou," I said, making him shudder. "Brother," he stammered. I leaned down, my voice dead calm. "Keep acting if you want. But next time you do something dirty, make sure you clean up your evidence. Because if I catch you, I will drag you to that place and make you relive my 3 years there." Zhou Ming's knees buckled. His back hit the wall, unable to squeeze out a single word. I stood up, walked around him, and headed back to my room. I pulled out my old phone and opened my notes. Observation log, day 5. Negotiations collapsed. Refused to sign the unfair agreement. Test results, they wanted an obedient son. I only require a fair court. Additional note, target, Zhou Ming exhibited signs of extreme fear. The doctor said this was a good sign. I stood by the window, looking down at the garden. Zhou Ming remained frozen in the hallway. I could still hear his heavy, ragged breathing. He was genuinely terrified. After all, in all these years, he had never seen me like this. Before, I was like a tamed dog, too afraid to bite, no matter how much I was mistreated. But I have already died once, and someone who has died once fears nothing. Memories of the reformatory flashed in my mind. When I first arrived, clueless about the rules, I was punished daily. Shocked daily, locked in solitary. Once the electricity knocked me out, I woke up on the floor, my mouth filled with blood from a bitten tongue. A man sat nearby, wearing a white coat and gold-rimmed glasses, his face completely expressionless. "You are awake," he said. I stared speechless. "I am Dr. Wei Yuru," he continued. "From today on, you belong to me." I thought he was my savior. Only later did I realize he came to rebuild me. He said I was too weak, too fragile, too easily manipulated. He told me I needed a new way to survive, how he drilled the rules into me one by one. Trust no one, rely on no one, love no one. Believe only in rules, evidence, and yourself. At first, I failed. I cried constantly, longing for home, believing my parents would rescue me. Eventually, he stopped teaching and let me learn on my own. He placed a mirror in my dark cell, forcing me to stare at my reflection. Day after day, I watched myself transform from weeping to silence, from shattered to calm. Then it hit me. My parents were not coming. My sister was not coming. Nobody was coming. I was my own savior. From that moment, I changed. No tears, no begging, no faith. I swore that when I got out, they would all suffer like I did. And now I am out. Observation log, day 5 concluded. Target fear level, elevated emotional volatility up 5%. The next morning, I stepped out, not for a walk, but to head straight to the Zhou Group headquarters. Those twin towers are the city landmarks. 3 years ago, I was an intern there. I foolishly believed hard work could close the gap between Zhou Ming and me in our parents' eyes. Instead, they handcuffed me in public and dragged me to the reform facility. Today, I am going back simply to retrieve my personal belongings. The doctor said reclaiming what is yours is crucial for rebuilding boundaries. I told no one and caught a cab. The midday sun was blinding as I approached the entrance holding a faded canvas bag. "Hold it right there," a guard snapped, blocking me. He sneered at my worn-out shirt with pure disgust. "Salespeople use the back door. This is the main entrance." I stopped, glancing at his badge. "I am not selling anything," I replied softly, my voice perfectly steady. "I am here to see Zhou Ting. He laughed. He scoffed. "You looking for President Zhou? Do you have an appointment?" "No," I replied honestly. "But I have this." I pulled a document from my bag, a copy of my resignation agreement from 3 years ago bearing the company seal. I just want to collect my belongings. "Get lost. Who are you trying to trick with scrap paper?" The guard shoved me hard. My thin frame wavered. and I stumbled back 2 steps. Passing employees began to cluster around, whispering and pointing. Wait, is not that the biological son of the Zhou family? Shh, quiet. I heard he lost his mind and got locked up for years. Young Master Zhou Ming actually sent a memo this morning warning us his brother is mentally unstable and asking us to be patient. I see. Zhou Ming had dug my grave in advance. Using this gentle warning, he branded me a lunatic in everyone's minds. I looked at the guard, then at the crowding onlookers. Their eyes held pity and ridicule, but zero respect. Mr. Zhou, leave now. The guard barked, stepping forward to drag me away. President Zhou gave strict orders. Unstable people like you are banned from the lobby. His grip clamped down on my arm, bruising me. I did not struggle. The doctor taught me that when faced with illegal physical force, the best weapon is not violence, but total exposure. I freed my hand, grabbed my old phone, and started a live stream, immediately framing the massive company logo and the guard's smug face. Hello, everyone. I said directly to the camera, my voice flat like reading a news broadcast. I am Zhou Ting, the biological son who was missing for 3 years. Today I came to retrieve my belongings, but security blocked me because President Zhou claims I am mentally unstable. The guard froze as the crowd erupted. In the live stream, the viewer count spiked. The wealthy family drama of the Zhous was always a hot local topic. Now let me ask you, I said, pointing the lens at his face without blinking, what is your legal basis for declaring me unstable? A professional medical evaluation or just a verbal order from President Zhou? The guard was speechless. He lunged to grab my phone. Put that away. No filming. I dodged him with ease, holding my ID up to the lens. If I am insane, show me a restraining order. Otherwise, your current actions constitute harassment, assault, and obstructing a citizen's lawful rights. Are you out of your mind? He roared. Yes, you just said I was sick, I replied softly, scanning the crowd. So I will follow my doctor's orders. Since you have labeled me a lunatic, then a lunatic can be forgiven for anything, right? I stepped forward, ramming my chest straight into his. My frame is thin, but my bones are hard. He winced, yet dared not strike back under the lens before tens of thousands of viewers. Zhou Ting, have you had enough? A sharp voice cut through the lobby. Zhou Ting Yue strutted out in red-bottomed heels flanked by executives. Looking at the crowd in my phone, her face flushed with fury. Shut it down. Turn off the stream right now, she hissed. She rushed up, demanding command. I stared at her immaculate makeup. President Zhou, I said, refusing to call her sister. I am not making a scene. I am auditing the past. 3 years ago, you accused me of stealing 100 million here and had me locked up. Now you stand here declaring me insane to lock me out. I turned the camera directly onto her face, my voice flat. You stripped me of my reputation, and now you want my basic rights. What makes you think I will ever obey you again? She trembled with rage. She raised her hand to slap me. I did not flinch. I kept my eyes on the lens. My doctor taught me if you want me gone, you have to kill me. If you cannot, you must adapt to my rules. Her hand froze. She saw the screen flooding with comments, criticizing her for bullying her own brother and calling our family disgusting. She finally realized the brother she could control died in that facility. You are a massive disappointment, she said, pulling her hand back, her voice icy. What do you gain by humiliating our family? What do I get? I chuckled softly. I do not want to gain anything. I only want you to feel pain. President Zhou, do you want to discuss logic, or did you expect me to accept abuse forever? She ground her teeth, unable to speak. Right then, a black Bentley pulled up. My second sister, Zhou Ruxiao, a senior lawyer in a sharp suit, stepped out. She scanned the scene with a cold, professional eye. Ting Ting, that is enough, she said, approaching me with a voice that was surprisingly gentle. I am your lawyer, but I am also your sister. Your current state is not fit for the public eye. Come with me. Let me take you for a full psychiatric evaluation. Okay? She was trying to pathologize me with legal jargon. I shut down the stream because I knew what came next did not need an audience. Second sister, I said politely, since you are a lawyer, please show me your power of attorney. If you cannot, please step aside. Otherwise, you will owe me far more than just an apology. She stood before me, the air freezing around us. She was perfectly elegant, her suit immaculate, looking down at me with condescending pity. I knew that look too well. 3 years ago, she watched me struggle on the ground with that exact expression assessing my guilt. Ting Ting, that is enough. Get in the car. Her voice was soft, like pacifying a difficult child. Your emotional instability has exceeded normal limits. You need a professional psychiatric evaluation and treatment." She turned to comfort Zhou Ting with a reassuring glance, then looked back. "As your family, we have a legal obligation to supervise your mental health. Do as you are told. Do not make this uglier." The phrase family supervision came out of her mouth, smelling of sterile, decaying medicine. I stared at her gold-rimmed glasses. Behind those lenses, there was no sisterly affection, only cold calculation. She wanted to use her legal status to lock me back into a cage for the mentally ill. But my doctor taught me when someone uses false authority to define you, do not argue. Expose them. I took a step back, establishing social distance. "Second sister," I said, my voice completely flat. "In what capacity are you speaking to me right now?" She faltered, her brow furrowing. "I am your sister, of course." "If you are my sister, drop the professional terminology." I stared at her jaw, my words sharp. "If you are representing a client, show me your credentials and her formal power of attorney. Otherwise, your medical claims are procedurally baseless and border on defamation." Her face hardened. She froze. She never expected me to use her own legal logic to shut her up. "Ting Ting, must you be so hostile? We only want what is best for you." "What is best for me?" I interrupted, a hollow smirk appearing on my face. 3 years ago, in the name of my own good, you handed the court that mental evaluation and destroyed my last shred of hope. Now, under that same lie, you want to lock me in another ward. I stepped closer, staring through her glasses. "Are you my doctor or their tool?" My sister subconsciously looks away, unable to meet my eyes. Her voice drops. "Zhou Ting, you are too paranoid. This is textbook victim mentality. Every time you fight back, you just prove you need treatment." "Prove it," I counter. "The doctor said truth is not about feelings. It is about behavioral evidence." I pull out my phone and open a copy of a legal document I downloaded while waiting. Under the mental health law, forcing someone into treatment against their will is illegal. Sister, you are a top attorney. You know the law better than me. If you force me out of here today, I will use this to sue and strip you of your license. Her eyes widen. She lives for her pristine professional reputation. I see the panic and fury flash behind her eyes. "You are completely hopeless," she snaps, finally losing her cool. Her fake, gentle mask slips, her voice turning shrill. "Zhou Ting, do you think reciting a few laws makes you untouchable? The selfishness and malice in your bones will never change. Never change." Those words strike me like a cold needle, stabbing right into my deepest scar. My gaze turns ice cold. The noise around us fades into a dead silence. "You are right," I say, my voice suddenly polite, almost formal. "I really cannot change. I cannot change the memory of my own sister, pushing me into that living hell 3 years ago. And I cannot change the survival instinct I built to survive every single minute in that place." I turn away from her shocked, pale face. "Lawyer Joe, go read the old case files. See how the desperate brother who begged you to believe him 3 years ago slowly died inside. I do not need your diagnosis, and I definitely do not need your saving." She stands frozen knuckles, turning white as she clutches her briefcase. She wants to argue to crush me with her legal logic, but she realizes I am not playing her game. I am like a block of ice. No matter how much heat she throws at me, she only gets a bitter chill. "Zhou Ting, stop right there!" Zhou Ting screams from behind. I keep walking. My doctor said avoiding toxic noise is the best way to stay sane. I slip past the reflection of the lobby doors, but I do not leave the building. I slip into the staff elevator and press 18, the finance department. That is where I interned 3 years ago. My termination was never finalized, and my personal notebook is still sitting there. Reclaiming what is mine is the first step to rebuilding my boundaries. The elevator doors slide open to complete chaos on the 18th floor. The glass conference room is packed with people, board directors, external auditors, and angry suppliers. My eldest sister, Zhou Ting sits at the head of the table rubbing her temples. Our lawyer sister is still downstairs, recovering from her breakdown. Meanwhile, our brother Zhou Ming stands beside Ting clutching a financial sheet and playing the loyal, reliable savior. I walk to the conference room and push open the glass door. The noise stops instantly. Every eye locks onto me. Ting looks up, her face darkening. "What are you doing up here? Where is security? Throw him out." She snaps, reaching for the phone. But a major supplier slams his hand on the table. "Save the family drama, President Zhou. We are here for our money. You still haven't explained the $100 million deficit from 3 years ago. The books are a mess, and we need answers now." $100 million. The room goes dead silent. 3 years ago, that missing money was the exact trap that sent me to the correction center. Back then, both Zhou Ming and I were finance interns. The investigation concluded that my account had authorized the transfer. The system showed my login ID moved the funds into an offshore shell account. I had no defense. Now Zhou Ming turns to look at me. A flash of cunning crosses his eyes before he instantly masks it with a look of deep, heartbreaking regret. Mr. Zhang, you know how this ledger is. Zhou Ming sighs, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Back then, my brother Zhou Ting was young and reckless. He developed a drug habit and stole the money. To protect our family honor, my eldest sister had to turn him in for rehabilitation. He was just released today, so he is still unstable. Please give us a few days for the family's sake, and we will fix the books. His words are flawless. He pacifies the supplier while cementing the blame on my back. He brands me as a newly released convict to justify my presence here today. The directors look at me with pure disgust. 3 years ago, if I were faced with this public setup, I would have lost my mind. I would have screamed and fought. I would have grabbed his collar, tears in my eyes, begging them to believe I never even touched the system. But that emotional outburst would only secure my label as a manic liar. Today I do not cry. I do not scream. Instead, I pull up a chair and sit down quietly. Mr. Zhou, I say, my voice dead calm as I stare at his face. What makes you think I am still that helpless boy who can only cry and beg for mercy? Zhou Ming freezes. He is used to my rage, not my silence. Brother, please. He stammers, forcing a tight smile. Your signature is on the files. The security footage shows you entering the server room. It is ironclad. I ignore his acting. Let's follow my doctor's advice then. My doctor says that every manufactured lie leaves a trace of conflicting information. I place my worn canvas bag on the table, unzip it, and slide an old flash drive to the center of the desk. Since we have audit experts in the room, let's make a bet. I look up, letting my eyes lock with everyone at the table. I want us to pull up the original payment path, the authorization chain, and the system logs for that 100 million transfer. Qingyue slams her hands down, standing up. Zhou Ting, stop this. That case was settled years ago. Settled by you, I correct her. My voice sharp and final. I am not here to explain myself. Explanations are for people who actually care. I am here to settle the score. I point to the flash drive. 3 years ago, I had no access. But during these 3 years, I learned to read system code. Zhou Ming says I signed off on it. But that transfer required 2 digital security keys, the chief financial officer's and mine. The room falls into a dead silence as the auditors lean in, their instincts triggered. They stare at me, and I stare at Zhou Ming. Cold sweat is beginning to beat on his forehead. System logs do not lie. The transfer happened at exactly 2:14 a.m. If you check the network IP address that authorized both keys at that moment, you will find a very interesting coincidence. My voice is soft, like telling a bedtime story. Both security keys were logged in from the exact same device, and the router address for that IP does not belong to this office. It belongs to Zhou Ming's private apartment. The room erupts. The external auditors immediately whip out their laptops, fingers flying across the keyboards. If this is true, it means someone sat in their own living room and stole both my key and the director's key to make the transfer. Zhou Ming turns pale as a ghost. He stares blankly at the table, his lips trembling. You are lying. This is a setup. We will see who is lying in a second, I say, leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms. Just like you said, truth is not about feelings, it is about evidence. 3 minutes later, the lead auditor looks up, his face grim. President Zhou, Mr. Zhou Ting, is telling the truth. The archived logs confirm the IP address was not from this building. According to network provider records, it matches the router registered to Master Zhou Ming. The air is sucked out of the room. Every head turns from me to Zhou Ming. His knees buckle and he collapses back into his chair. The victim mask he wore so proudly and his perfect lie shatter instantly under the cold data. Sister, no, I swear I didn't do it. Someone must have hacked my Wi-Fi. He grabs desperately at Qingyue's sleeve. Qingyue stands frozen, staring at the screen, then at her trembling brother. Finally, her eyes drift to me. I see absolute shock in them mixed with a sudden creeping terror. She finally realizes that 3 years ago she personally condemned her innocent younger brother to a living hell. She ruined my entire life. A suffocating silence fills the room. Qingyue begins to tremble, her eyes welling with tears. Normal people would fall to their knees begging for forgiveness and crying over their mistake. But this is Zhou Qingyue. She is the matriarch of this family. Reputation and power mean more to her than life itself. She takes a deep breath, trying to salvage her authority, though her voice shakes. Even if you didn't steal the money, did you have to humiliate us in front of all these outsiders? Do you have any idea what this does to our family's reputation? Why couldn't you bring this to me privately? She never changes. No matter the truth, if her interests are threatened, it is my fault. I listen to her ridiculous excuses. I do not feel a single spark of anger. I stand up, slide the flash drive back into my bag, and walk up to her. She expects me to rage and scream, but I simply look at her. President Zhou. I say, my voice suddenly quieter and more polite than ever. You do not owe me an apology. You owe me consequences. Today is only the beginning. From now on, you are no longer family. I grab my bag and walk out. Behind me, she collapses into her chair. The board members erupt in hushed, angry questions. I do not care. By the elevator, I open the notes app on my old phone. Observation log, day 8. Information gap exposed. Zhou Ming has lost all trust. Target Zhou Qingyue is crumbling, though she refuses to admit fault. My doctor said those who refuse to confess will face even harsher consequences from the system. I type the final line on my screen. Punishment begins. I walk out of the company doors into the dark night, looking at the passing traffic, my heart unusually calm. I played this part for 3 long years. From the day I entered that hell, I started gathering evidence and studying Zhou Ming's flaws. Greed always leaves a trail. I waited 3 years for this very day, and now it is finally here. But honestly, it does not feel as sweet as I imagined. I thought that, when the truth came out, I would laugh and feel a great sense of relief. But now that it is done, I feel absolutely nothing. It is just a completed task. Nothing more. My phone buzzes. A text from that private number. Well done. I stare at those words and force a tiny smile. Sure, I did well. But what now? Where do I go from here? The doctor says closure brings new beginnings, but I cannot even imagine one. I cannot even picture what a new beginning looks like. Forget it. Let's just go home first. Observation log day 8 concluded. Task completion, 80%. Emotional fluctuation, 5%. Night has fallen by the time I reach the Zhou villa. A familiar scent hits me. That rich aroma is sweet and sour mandarin fish. I was 8 years old when the Zhou family finally brought me back. I was so tiny and dark from malnutrition. My mom cooked this dish for me herself back then. She told me, Ting Ting, this is your home now. Mom will make up for everything we owe you. I believed her. But instead, what she made up for was 3 years of absolute hell and countless times of her saying, you really disappoint me. Ting Ting, you are back. My mom ran out of the kitchen in her apron wearing a timid, pleasing smile. My third sister, Zhou Yihui, sat on the sofa clutching luxury shopping bags. Ting Ting, come look. Your sister bought you new clothes and a new laptop from your favorite brand. Yihui walked over, reaching to grab my arm. I stepped back, dodging her gently. It was a quiet move, but it carved a massive chasm right between us. Mrs. Zhou, Madame Zhou, I said, my voice completely flat. My doctor says unprovoked kindness usually stems from a guilt-driven, compensatory mindset. Your behavior is disrupting my personal order. My mother's smile froze on her face. Her eyes turned red instantly. Ting Ting, Mom knows she was wrong. Qingyue came back from the office and told me everything. That 100 million yuan back then, you didn't steal it. It was Xiaoming. She choked up, stepping forward to hug me. Mom has suffered too. I want to make it up to you. Please give me a chance. Her tears were real. Her guilt seemed real too. But my heart was a frozen lake without a single ripple. Compensate, I walked to the table staring at the steaming fish. 3 years ago, Zhou Ming accused me of stealing and you slapped me across the face in front of everyone. The Zhous don't need a thief like me, you said. 2 years ago, when I was locked up, I was put in solitary for refusing to admit I was sick. I wrote begging you to take me home. You replied telling me to behave and stop embarrassing the family. 1 year ago, I was electrocuted for refusing pills. I was comatose for 3 days. President Zhou came to see me. He told me that if I behaved, the family might still have a place for me. With every word I spoke, my mother's face grew paler. Finally, she collapsed against the table, sobbing hysterically. "Stop it, Ting Ting. Please stop. No, I have to say it." I pulled out a chair and sat down with quiet grace. I opened a file on my phone. "My doctor says relationships aren't maintained by blood. They are settled by actions. This is my ledger. For the past 3 years." I slid the phone to the center of the table. 3 years of illegal confinement totaling 1,095 days. 34 separate physical injuries. My stolen right to education, my social life, and my dignity all calculated into precise numbers. I looked up at them. My eyes were completely clear, but they were so cold they made them shiver. "Now you want to wipe this ledger clean with a single meal, a few clothes, and a late apology? What makes you think I still need your love?" Jo Hui stared at the records on the screen, reading the agony I had written word by word. She gagged and bolted to the bathroom. Retching sounds echoed from the hall. My mother collapsed onto the floor, grabbing my pants leg, sobbing hysterically. "It is my fault. I am so sorry. I did not want to send you there. Qing Yue told me that place would cure your lying. Yao Ming said he saw you hanging out with thugs. I did not. I just wanted this family to be stable." Ting Ting. Stable. I repeated, a mocking smile touching my lips. "For your stability, you liquidated me like a risky asset." I leaned down and looked directly into my mother's eyes, my voice colder and more polite than ever before. "Mrs. Zhou, please admit one thing. 3 years ago, when you signed the papers to lock me up, did you believe that if I just disappeared, this family would return to its perfect, happy illusion?" My mother opened her mouth, her tear-stained face frozen, unable to utter a single syllable. Her terror gave me the answer. Yes, back then she also saw me as a stain on her perfect family. I did not explain. Explanations are only for people who care. I stood up and grabbed my canvas bag. "Save this fish for Zhou Ming. I am sure he needs this little bit of family warmth right now." I walked upstairs. My mother screamed my name behind me, but I did not turn back. "My doctor says when you kill your needs, you kill the source of your pain." Back in my room, I sat in the dark as they continued to weep. They were just paying the price for their own guilt. I unlocked my old phone and opened my digital journal. Observation Day 9. The emotional ledger is public. The defense has collapsed. Target Mrs. Zhou is drowning in guilt. But my doctor says this guilt only exists because she got caught. If the truth stayed buried, they would still view me as the wicked child. Outside the garden, lights flickered on, illuminating the manicured lawn Zhou Ming loved so much. I coldly typed a final line in my notes. Family ties are dead. The ledger is settled. Moving to the next phase. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number read, "Miss Zhou, it seems you have learned how to be a proper auditor." I am pleased. My grip tightened on the phone. It was him, the man from the facility. The doctor who broke me to pieces in that asylum, then put me back together in this clinical shape. I stared at his message. I should have felt happy to receive his praise, but there was only a void. Suddenly, a wild scream echoed from downstairs. It was Zhou Ming, followed by the crash of breaking furniture. It seemed my mother's sudden guilt had already turned on him. But I knew Zhou Ming would not sit quietly. He would use the media to strike back. Observation Day 9 concluded. External interference rising. Emotional variance 5%. The next morning, his counterattack began. It was faster and clumsier than I expected. 30 minutes ago, several local forums and video apps erupted with sensational headlines, each one wilder than the last. He was moving quickly to control the narrative. The biological heir returns as a monster, brutally beats adopted son, and drives mother mad. The video was shaky, showing my mother weeping on the floor in slow motion, set to tragic music. Then the camera focused on Zhou Ming's face. His cheek was swollen as he stared into the lens with practiced terror. The comments were feral. 3 years in an asylum was not enough. Lock her up forever. The Zhous raised a viper. Blood means nothing when your soul is completely rotten. Poor Xiaoming, he did everything for them. And now, this psycho returns to steal his inheritance. I read the words, but they were just noise. My doctor taught me that public opinion is a cheap bullet. It only harms those who care about their reputation. I have none. I only have evidence. My door was slammed open. Zhou Ting Yue stormed in, veins bulging in his forehead, clutching a tablet. "Zhou Ting, is this what you wanted?" he roared, throwing the screen onto my lap. He was shaking with rage. He pointed at the trending topics. The board of directors is calling nonstop. Our partners are asking if we raised a lunatic. You have ruined our reputation. You are going to apologize right now to control the damage. He was still barking orders with that same old arrogance. He knew I was innocent 3 years ago, but to him our company's image was worth more than my soul. I picked up the tablet and swiped through the comments. President Zhou, I said, looking up with dead eyes. Do you want a logical solution or just a scapegoat? He froze, caught off guard by my reply. I am ordering you to apologize for the sake of the big picture, he screamed. The big picture belongs to you, I said, putting the tablet down. I only manage my own balance sheet. I reached for my old phone containing the evidence. I plugged it into my laptop. My doctor says lying and slander are bad habits. Since Zhou Ming likes to use the internet as a weapon, I will teach him what a closed loop of evidence looks like. My fingers flew across the keys uploading the first video. It was the raw, unedited security footage from our living room. No music, no cuts. It showed exactly how he provoked me. Spat insults staged his fall and earned that slap. The second upload was the official police report detailing my claim of domestic abuse. It clearly stated that the Zhous were under investigation for unlawful detention. The third file was the lethal blow, the company's original server logs from 3 years ago, coupled with a panicked draft apology my second sister, Ruxiao, had just emailed me. She wanted to negotiate, but she did not realize that every word she sent was just another weapon for me to use. I hit send. The screen went dark. You are insane, Qingyue gasped, his voice shaking as he watched my screen. You are going to ruin us. I am not the one ruining you, I said. I grabbed my bag. I told you your family status has been revoked. I paused at the door, glancing back. President Zhou, I do not do damage control. I only deliver consequences. I stepped into the hall. Zhou Ming was lurking in the shadows by the stairs. He stared at his phone. His smug grin melted into pure terror, then twisted into feral rage. You think you won, Ting Ting? He hissed, lunging to grab my bag. I did not flinch. I reached out and slammed my palm right onto his throat, pinning him. My grip was tight, but I kept him alive. My doctor says physical violence is unprofessional. I looked into his eyes, my voice freezing. Let me teach you some discipline. I shoved him against the wall. You cannot apologize this away. Now enjoy the fire you started. Downstairs, my mother started crying again, but nobody comforted her this time. They were too busy staring at their screens, watching me rip away the family's glittering facade piece by piece. I walked out into the cold night. My phone screen lit up. It was that private number, again, good work, but you need to finish them. I locked my screen, staring at my thin shadow on the pavement. He was right. My doctor says self-love is the ultimate rule, and self-love means permanently neutralizing anyone who threatens you. Observation Day 10. The media narrative has flipped. The Zhou family reputation is completely bankrupt. Target Zhou Ming is fully exposed. They wanted to use family ties to break me, but I have no family left. My doctor says this is the price of freedom. The next morning, the atmosphere in the villa was suffocating. Qingyue skipped work. My sisters were there, and even my father, who rarely showed his face, sat in the center of the room. His expression was grim. Ting Ting, sit down, he commanded. His voice carried a heavy, unquestionable weight. I walked into the center of the room. Mr. Zhou, I greeted him politely. His brows furrowed into a tight knot. What did you just call me? My doctor says titles must reflect the true state of our relationship. I looked at him. I do not belong to this house. Impudent. He slammed. Just then, Zhou Ming screamed from upstairs. He stumbled down the steps, clutching a folder. He was white as a ghost, trembling violently. Dad, Qingyue. We have a crisis. He threw the documents onto the table, his fingers shaking. The bidding team just called me. Our secret bid for the core project was leaked. The competitor submitted a price identical to ours. Qingyue's eyes turned sharp. What that is, our 10 billion yuan marquee project. And that is not all, Zhou Ming whimpered, collapsing back onto the sofa, covering his face. My personal seal from the safe and the electronic encryption keys are missing. Instantly, every eye in the room turned on me like daggers. Zhou Ting, you were in my room last night? Zhou Ming glared at me, his eyes full of terror. I saw you passing by my door with something in your hands. Lier Yihui blurted out, but her voice lacked conviction. Qingyue stepped directly into my space. The last trace of guilt in his eyes vanished. You actually sold our core corporate secrets, Zhou Ting, do you really have to destroy this family to be satisfied? He stepped closer, his voice ice cold. My mother stood up too, her eyes full of despair. How could you? That is your father's life's work. Here we go again. The same old accusations. They never needed proof. The moment Zhou Ming cried, I was automatically the villain. You say I am crazy. I looked at Zhou Ting Yue and smiled. My voice was barely a whisper. Then I will follow the doctor's plan. I turned to Zhou Ming, my tone deceptively gentle. You claim you saw me enter your room. Zhou Ming gritted his teeth and nodded. Yes. Last night at 2 a.m. And you say the seal and key are gone. Yes. That is the company's lifeline. I nodded, pulling a faded old phone from my canvas bag. The doctor says lying is bad. Slandering is worse. I pulled up a security video and cast it directly to the TV. Mr. Zhou, you should know a crazy person like me has a habit. I never trust my environment. On screen, the hallway outside my room was visible, crystal clear. At 2 a.m., my door never opened. But at 3 a.m., a figure in silk pajamas crept out of Zhou Ming's room. He was carrying a black box and shoved it straight into the trash chute at the end of the hall. That was dead silence filled the room. Zhou Ming's crying stopped instantly. He froze on the sofa, his face turning pale, then green. This is fake. You framed me, you psycho. He screamed, lunging at the TV. I didn't stop him. I just tapped another file and audio began to play. It was Zhou Ming's muffled voice talking to a stranger. I got rid of the stuff. I will email you the plan. Wire the rest to the offshore account. Zhou Ting is our scapegoat. She is finished. The recording was crystal clear, catching his excited, heavy breathing. Every gasp of excitement was perfectly captured. I slowly unclenched my fists, my anger fading into cold, dead numbness. Zhou Ting Yue stared at the screen, swaying as if she might collapse. My second sister, Zhou Ruxiao, opened her mouth to defend him, but she choked, unable to make a sound. What makes you think I will just sit here and cry for justice like before? I looked at Zhou Ming. My eyes didn't waver. I stared at him like he was absolute trash. The doctor said right and wrong aren't feelings, they are behavioral evidence. Mr. Zhou, when you sent the bid to our rivals, you forgot to check your study for a voice recorder. Oh, I put it there on purpose. I pocketed my phone, looking at these people, utterly humiliated by the truth. President Zhou, Mrs. Zhou. I called them out one by one with chilling politeness. The truth is out. Every single accusation you threw at me needs to be settled now. My mother rushed forward to grab my hand. Ting Ting, Mom was wrong. I was fooled. I will kick him out. I stepped back and slapped her hand away. You don't owe me an apology. You owe me consequences. I stared at the mother who claimed to love me, but always abandoned me. 3 years ago, you chose family stability over me. Today, faced with the truth, your first instinct is still to sweep it under the rug. I glanced at my father's hand, already dialing the PR department. He still wanted to protect the family's reputation and his precious, perfect adopted son. From today on, none of you are my family. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. I already leaked the files to the competitors and regulators. The lawsuits and ruin you face are well-deserved. Zhou Ting, stop. My father roared. I paused and looked back. Do you want to talk logic, or do you just expect me to keep taking your abuse? I calmly walked out, pushing open the heavy front door. The wind was howling. My phone buzzed with a short text, he is exposed. Now you can finally cut out this cancer. I am waiting outside. I looked up at the street lamps. The doctor says loving yourself is the first rule. I have finally learned. Observation log, day 11. Countered the frame-up. Zhou Ming is exposed. The family failed to cover it up again. System shut down. The doctor said, well done. Inside the grand villa, my father sat on the main sofa, slamming his cane against the floor with a heavy thud. He was waiting. Waiting for Zhou Ting Yue's final audit report and waiting for Zhou Ming's pathetic excuse. I sat diagonally opposite him on a single armchair, clutching my faded old phone. My fingers slid across the screen. The doctor said, when all evidence points to one exit, the truth is no longer a secret. It is a trial. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Zhou Ting Yue rushed in, radiating cold fury. She held a crumpled pile of documents, her eyes bloodshot. She glared directly at Zhou Ming, who was curled up in my mother's arms, his shoulders trembling. Sister, let me explain. I was framed. I swear. Zhou Ming sobbed, using his usual act. Zhou Ming sobbed, playing his usual pathetic victim role. Zhou Ting Yue did not say a single word. She hurled the stack of papers directly into his face. Sheets scattered across the floor, all bearing official bank and police stamps. Framed Zhou Ting Yue's voice shook. She was shaking, with pure, uncontrollable rage. Zhou Ming, that $100 million offshore account is under your name. The anonymous email framing, Zhou Ting, came from the laptop in your study. Tell me who crawled inside your brain to frame you. Zhou Ming's crying stopped instantly. Staring at the evidence on the floor, his face went from pale to a deathly ash gray. My mother's eyes widened. She instinctively let go of him. Xiao Ming, is what she said true? Her voice trembled violently. My father suddenly stood up, and he strode over and slapped him hard across the face. You beast, he roared, his chest heaving. We raised you for 20 years and you ruined my company for money. You even got your own brother thrown into frozen in that place. Zhou Ming's head spun from the blow, blood dripping from his mouth. Suddenly he stopped acting. He slowly wiped the blood and let out a chilling laugh. My brother! He glared at my father. What kind of brother is he? Ever since he returned, did you even look at me? I just wanted security. Am I wrong? My mother stared at this stranger of a son collapsing onto the sofa in tears. Call the police? My father muttered, closing his eyes, looking 10 years older. Zhou Qingyue looked at me, her eyes filled with shattered guilt. Ting Ting, I am sorry. I was blind. I hurt you. She walked over, reaching for my hand. I pulled back, avoiding her touch. President Zhou, I said quietly, keeping my voice completely flat. The doctor says delayed justice only comforts the guilty's conscience. Her hand froze in midair. I pulled several printed forms from my bag and spread them on the coffee table. Since the truth is out, let's settle this account once and for all. I looked at the weeping family. Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, President Zhou. I addressed them one by one. The money fraud was Zhou Ming's doing. He will face jail. But sending me to the reform facility 3 years ago, that was all you. I handed them a pen. I don't accept verbal apologies. They cost nothing. I want a written statement signed and stamped by each of you admitting you illegally locked me up 3 years ago. Zhou Qingyue froze, staring at me. What do you need this for? The doctor says people only feel pain when their mistakes are written in black and white. I looked at her. You would rather blame an adopted son than admit your own cruelty. Sign it. Only then does your debt to me enter the repayment phase. My father looked at the paper, his hand shaking too much to hold the pen. Ting Ting. Must we go this far? We are family. I smiled. Then I'll follow the doctor's plan. From today, you aren't family. You are my debtors. Zhou Qingyue bit her lip and signed first. Her tears smudged the ink. My parents signed too, their movements so slow they seemed to drain their remaining life force. I gathered the signed statements, sliding them carefully into a plastic pouch. Zhou Qingyue looked up at me. Ting Ting, we cleared everything up, she choked out. Zhou Ming is gone. Can you please stay? I picked up my bag, looking out at the dark night. The doctor says once a rotting limb is amputated, you never stitch it back. I walked out. Behind me, my mother wailed in despair, and Zhou Qingyue kept repeating apologies. But my mind was quiet, perfectly still. My phone vibrated. An unsaved contact texted, Did you get the papers? I replied with a single word, Yes. They typed back instantly. Excellent. Come back home. I stared at the screen, a faint warmth flickering in my eyes for the first time. Observation log, day 12. Truth has landed. Debtor status confirmed. They finally admitted their crimes, but they lost my forgiveness forever. The doctor says real freedom only comes after a full settlement. The villa has never been this quiet. Zhou Ming was taken for investigation. Even the family portrait hanging in the living room was taken down by my father frame and thrown away into the storage room. For once, the family united on something: exile, the adopted son investigate the past, and compensate me. The dining table was packed with dishes, all cooked based on my faint memories from before I was 8. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, my 3 sisters lined up. They stared at me with sickeningly sweet affection. Ting Ting, I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs, my mother said, placing one in my bowl with trembling hands. In the past, Mom was foolish. I was blinded by that ungrateful snake. I will make it up to you double. I looked at the rib. The doctor says when someone uses food to apologize, they have run out of real things to say. I did not pick up my chopsticks. Mrs. Zhou. I pushed the bowl away as if it were trash. The doctor says food expired for 3 years is toxic. Care that is 3 years late is no different. My mother's smile froze, tears spilling instantly. Ting Ting, you still blame me, don't you? I really know I was wrong. Mrs. Zhou, I do not blame you, I replied politely, though it felt like speaking through bulletproof glass. Blaming someone requires emotional energy, and I have none left. My eldest sister, Zhou Ting spoke up, her voice raspy but demanding. Since the truth is out, the company will issue a statement restoring your reputation. I have already transferred 5% of the group's shares to your name as compensation. She stared, her eyes loaded with silent pressure. Look how much I have compromised. Be satisfied. I stared at her. 3 years ago, she slapped me in this exact room, calling me a thief who did not deserve our name. President Zhou. I smiled, my eyes dead. Do you want to talk logic, or do you just want me to take the abuse? She froze, her face turning pale. Do you think 5% of shares buys back 3 years of illegal imprisonment? Do you think a printed statement fills the blank spaces left in my brain by electroshock therapy? I slid a bank card onto the table. This is the cash value of everything you gave me recently. I will not explain. Explanations are only for people who care. Are you doing this to bring me back, or just to ease your own guilt? The question sliced through their hypocrisy like a scalpel. A dead silence fell over the living room. I slammed my glass onto the table, splashing liquor everywhere. What do you want, Zhou Ting? My father growled, his eyes red. Zhou Ming is already ruined. Are you trying to destroy us too? We're family. Blood ties can't be broken. How convenient. That word was the shackle that threw me into the abyss 3 years ago, and the hook, trying to drag me back to hell now. The doctor said right and wrong aren't feelings, but behavioral evidence. I stood up, straightening my faded shirt. The evidence shows your actions for the last 3 years were abuse, and your current behavior is just self-delusion. My sister Zhou Yihui suddenly rushed over, arms wide, to hug me, sobbing uncontrollably. Ting Ting, please, don't be so cold. Let me take you sketching to anywhere you want to go. Can we start over? I stepped aside, dodging her hug with perfect precision. My hands stayed in my pockets. Sister, I said, calling her that. For the last time, my voice faint as a breeze. You just crossed my safety distance. The doctor said unwanted contact is assault. I stared at her frozen, outstretched hand. I felt no hatred, only complete numbness. Why do you think I still need you? As of today, you aren't family anymore, just debtors. I turned and walked toward the stairs, my steps heavy. Behind me, my mother wailed in agony. My father sighed heavily, and Zhou Ting roared helplessly. It was all just noise. Back in my room, I shut the door, drew the heavy curtains, and pulled out my old phone. I opened my notes and typed my last entry of the day. Observation, day 13. High volume of emotional noise. Conclusion, they want to fix things to ease their guilt. Directive, reject reconciliation, terminate relationship. I began packing. I had very little, just an old canvas bag. The doctor said self-love is rule number 1, and my rules have no room for the Zhou family. I grabbed my bag and took one last look at this decaying room. They thought getting rid of Zhou Ming would fix everything. They didn't know the Zhou Ting who wanted to be loved died 3 years ago on a cold electroshock bed. Walking downstairs, they were still frozen in the dining room. I didn't say goodbye. I walked straight to the grand entrance and pushed it open. The night air was cool. Clutching my faded canvas bag, I walked to the edge of the estate. This was my last time here. 3 years ago, I was dragged out. A few days ago, invited back. Now I'm leaving on my own terms. Ting Ting. Behind me, something heavy crashed to the floor. Then came my mother's piercing shriek. Barefoot, she collapsed onto the cold marble, desperately clutching my pants. Mom begs, you don't leave, I'll give you my life. It was all my fault. I was blinded by that ungrateful wretch's lies. I'll die right now if only you'll stay. I looked down at her manicured hands, her knuckles white from gripping so hard. 3 years ago, those same hands held me with equal force. Only then, she was pushing me away, telling me never to come back and embarrass them. Mrs. Zhou, I murmured. My voice was perfectly calm. The doctor says emotional breakdowns are a sign of weakness. Kneeling doesn't change facts. The agreement you signed 3 years ago has been in effect for over 1,000 days. For over 1,000 days, my home hasn't been here. She stared up, face drenched in tears, her eyes filled with terror and desperate pleas. No, your name is Zhou. You're my flesh and blood. You belong to the Zhou family. Blood is thicker than water. Ting Ting, are you really abandoning us over some doctor's words? Beside her, my sister Zhou Yihui sobbed, her entire body shaking. She reached out to grab my sleeve, but snapped her hand back, remembering my words. Ting Ting, please, let's get another DNA test. We'll invite the whole city. We'll announce to everyone that you are the only young master of the Zhou family. We'll make it up to you and give you the best. My father, who had been silent in the shadows, stepped forward. His voice was heavy, dripping with self-righteous comfort. Ting Ting, I know you're throwing a tantrum. I know you feel wronged. Shares, cars, villas, whatever you want. I, Joe Janin, will give it all to you today. Stop talking about cutting ties. Our doors are always open to you. After all, you carry my blood. I looked at him, this father, who still thought money and bloodlines could fix anything. Mr. Joe, I said. My gaze remained clear, but it felt like looking at a lifeless object. What makes you think I still need your belief? What makes you think I'd lock myself back in this cage for your blood-stained money? I pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the hallway cabinet. This is a formal notice of severed relations and a household registration removal form. I've already applied for independence. From now on, I am no longer a Joe, just myself. The doctor says self-love is rule number 1. Staying here breaks that rule. My sister Zhou Ruxiao wanted to use legal arguments to keep me, but seeing the envelope, this top lawyer who had never faltered in court collapsed onto the sofa. You're actually removing yourself from our household? She stared at me devastated. Zhou Ting, legally blood ties can't be severed. What is the point of this, other than hurting us? The point, I echoed, laughing softly. I don't care about a point. I only want an end. An end to this 3-year torture. My eldest sister, Zhou Ting Yue, burst through the door, clutching a newly signed relinquishment of company control. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice raspy. Zhou Ting, look. I sent Zhou Ming to jail. I can give you the whole company. Don't you hate me? Stay, torture me however you want. Just don't go. The devastation in her eyes was real. Her regret was real. But to me, it was just the usual Zhou family self-delusion. CEO Zhou, I said, pronouncing each word clearly. I don't hate you. Hate is reserved for people who matter. I don't care about you at all. I gently pried my mother's hands off. It was a smooth, effortless motion without a shred of hesitation. My mother's last nerve snapped, and she fainted. The house descended into chaos. My father's roars, my third sister's wails, my second sister's sobs. The decades-old facade of the respectable Zhou family was finally torn away. I walked to the door. The cool night breeze felt wonderful on my face. I paused, keeping my back to them. I'm going to see someone. Don't look for me. The doctor says my new life starts today. I stepped outside. Behind me, the gilded mansion looked like a lonely tomb under the lights. It housed the very people who had sold me out 3 years ago. Now the truth was out, but the Zhou Ting who died can never return. I pulled out my phone. On the screen was a single unsaved text at the gate. I took a deep breath and walked toward the figure waiting under the street lamp. My steps light, as if I had never been hurt. At the old station on the city's edge, I stood holding my faded canvas bag. The Zhous hadn't followed. The notice of severed relations I left behind was enough to keep Zhou Ruxiao busy for weeks, and enough to keep my father awake every night, tasting the bitterness of isolation. The doctor said after a cleanup, never look back at the fire. The cries from the flames only want to drag you down. A black SUV pulled up silently. The window rolled down, revealing an incredibly calm, almost unnaturally pale face. Wei Yuru. Wearing gold-rimmed glasses, his hair styled immaculately, he looked at me not like an old friend reunited, but like a scientist analyzing flawless experimental data. You are 3 minutes and 14 seconds late, he said, his voice as cold and precise as a research paper. That parting family drama at the Zhou house wasted too much of your precious life energy. I pulled open the door and got into the passenger seat. The AC was blasting bone-chillingly cold, but I loved it. Compared to the suffocating warmth of the Zhous, this freezing chill actually felt safe. They've cleared things up, I said, staring at the dark road ahead. My voice was steady. Zhou Ming is in detention. My mother knelt to beg me. Zhou Ting Yue tried to give me the company. Zhou Yihui cried, her eyes swollen. I paused, feeling Wei Yuru's gaze linger on my white knuckles, clutching the bag. But I didn't want to smile, nor did I feel any satisfaction. It was just boring. Wei Yuru started the car, the engine rumbling softly. Regret is a luxury for abusers. It has nothing to do with the victim. Keeping his eyes on the road, his long, pale fingers tapped the steering wheel. Zhou Ting, you must understand that their current pain is from losing control over you, not because they suddenly found a conscience. If I hadn't sent you to the correctional facility, you never could have cut them off. I leaned back and closed my eyes. 3 years ago, Wei Yuru was suspended over ethical issues. He wasn't sent there by mistake. He chose to enter that twisted, malicious system to find the perfect research subject. and I, with nowhere else to turn, became his prey. He taught me to shut down my feelings, to use cold logic, to dissect anyone trying to use me. He said self-love is the only ticket out of hell, but I knew that the moment I learned to love myself, I also lost the ability to love anyone else. Did the Joes get the records from these 3 years, he asked. They've been sent, I said, opening my eyes to watch the streets fly past. It contains the rules you wrote and the actual data of my physical reactions during the electroshocks. They'll see it, they'll look at that data, and slowly understand how their real son, who once cried tears of joy over his mother's soup, died right in front of them. Weiyuru suddenly pulled over in the middle of the bridge. He killed the engine, turning to face me. Behind his glasses, his eyes burned with a dark, obsessive possessiveness. Zhou Ting, what is the Zhou family to you now? I looked into those cold, hyper-rational eyes. A landfill, I whispered. Good. A tiny smirk played on his lips, his only expression all night. From today on, you are my creation, my exclusive masterpiece. The world outside is still full of noise, but here the rules are absolute. He pulled an old correctional badge from his pocket mine. He pinned it to my collar. His fingers brushed my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. Mr. Zhou, welcome home. I stared at the shimmering city in the distance toward the Zhou family mansion. It was lit up. My father would be staring at the severance notice, unable to sleep. My mother would hold my childhood clothes, crying until dawn. Zhou Ting Yue now owned the whole company, but she could never find that silly smiling younger brother. They won every hand, only to lose the one person who truly wanted their love. But I don't need love anymore. I pulled my old shirt tight, fastening every button right up to my neck. The doctor says this is freedom. I closed my eyes as the car started again, merging into the endless dark. We drove for a long time, so long I almost fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, the car had stopped in front of a rundown building. We're here, Weiyuru said. I pushed the door open. It was an ordinary gray apartment block with a rusty security door and a flickering hallway light. You'll live here from now on. Weiyuru led the way upstairs. 3rd floor on the left. He unlocked the door and stepped aside. It was small, just one bedroom and a living room, but very clean. The furniture was basic but complete. My clinic is nearby. Call me if you need anything, he said. I stood in the middle of the room looking around this strange place. Is this my new home, I asked. Yes, he replied, watching me. Not satisfied, I shook my head. No, I am not ungrateful, just unsettled. Leaving that gilded cage to suddenly have a place of my own, I do not know how to react. Dr. Wei paused at the door, looked back, and said, Zhou Ting, you have done your duty. From now on, you can do whatever you want. What I want to do, I froze, having no idea. He was quiet for a moment, then murmured, Take your time. You have plenty of it anyway. The door clicked shut. I stood alone in this tiny room, listening to the distant sounds of passing cars and neighbors chatting. It was quiet yet completely foreign. Walking to the window, I pulled back the curtains to watch the night. The city was glowing and bustling, but none of it belonged to me. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. Observation log day 14. New environment, new identity, new beginning. Emotional fluctuations, none. The doctor says this is called freedom. I stared at those words for a very long time. Freedom. Is this really freedom? I did not know, but at least it was better than that cage. I put down my phone, lay back on the bed, and stared up. The ceiling was plain white, just like the confinement cell in the reformatory. But this time, I knew the door was unlocked. I could leave or return whenever I pleased. This must be freedom. I closed my eyes, and a sudden memory surfaced. A long, long time ago, I was brought to the Zhou family estate for the first time. Standing at the entrance of the villa, staring at that magnificent mansion, I was filled with joy, believing I finally had a home. I had no idea it was not a home but a grave. Now that child is dead, and the one surviving is someone else, someone who no longer needs a home. Observation log day 14 ends. A month later, I sat in Dr. Wei's clinic watching the sunlight. Today was my final psychological evaluation. All my indicators were completely stable. Dr. Wei set the report down and looked at me. Congratulations, Zhou Ting, you graduated. I nodded, feeling nothing in particular. This past month had been quiet. I woke at 6 every morning, washed up, folded my blanket, hung my towel exactly 5 centimeters from the wall, and went out to walk, buy groceries, cook, read, and sleep. Sometimes Dr. Wei would drop by, taking me to his clinic to chat or grab lunch. He told me I was recovering well. I said I did not feel any different. He smiled. That means you are. Then he asked, what are your plans next? I thought about it. I do not know. Then do not know, he said. You have plenty of time anyway. I smiled. It was my first smile in a whole month. Dr. Wei stared at me, a strange look flickering in his eyes before vanishing. Zhou Ting, he asked suddenly, do you hate them? I froze. Truthfully, I had no idea. A month ago, I did not think I hated them, and I still felt the same way now. Yet waking up in the dead of night to stare at the ceiling memories would flood back. My mother holding Zhou Ming, looking at me with pure disgust. My father standing on the steps, his back turned to me. Zhou Qingyue's cold indifference while signing that authorization form. My second sister's calm face handing over fabricated evidence. Zhou Ming's hidden smirk when he faked that fall. These scenes played like a movie, looping in my mind. Strangely, though, as I watched them, I felt absolutely nothing. It was like witnessing someone else's story. I do not know, I answered honestly. Dr. Wei nodded and let it drop. Standing up, he walked to the window and turned his back to me. Zhou Ting, do you ever think you might forgive them? I stared at his back and thought, maybe, but definitely not today. Dr. Wei did not turn around, but I noticed his shoulders shift slightly. Let's go, he murmured. I will walk you home. It was dark by the time we left the clinic. The streets were quiet, streetlights stretching our shadows long against the pavement. We walked side by side, neither of us speaking. When we reached my building, he paused. I will leave you here, he said. I looked up at him. The moonlight softened his features, making his usually stoic face seem remarkably gentle. Dr. Wei, I called out suddenly. Thank you. He paused, surprised, and then his lips curved upward. It was the first time he had ever smiled like that around me. Not a polite clinical grin, but a genuine warm smile. You are welcome, Zhou Ting. Live well. I nodded, and he turned to leave. I stood at the entrance watching his silhouette fade into the night. Then I went upstairs, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. It was quiet. Walking to the window, I looked out. The city was still bustling, but this time it did not feel so foreign. Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Ting Ting. Mom is sick. Can you come back to see me? I stared at the message for a long time before slipping my phone back into my pocket unanswered. Lying back down, I stared at the white ceiling. Only this time I did not think it looked so much like a confinement cell. Closing my eyes, those old memories drifted back, but this time they faded like bleached photographs, slowly dissolving into the deep corners of my mind. Maybe one day I will go back. Maybe never. But right now I just want to get a good night of sleep. Final observation log. All indicators normal. Goal accomplished, independent personality established. The doctor says this is true freedom.